I talk about things like trust and cooperation, and there should be no demand for my work. So I'm embarrassed that I have a career. But the fact of the matter is there is demand for my work, which means that there's an opportunity. It means that trust and cooperation are not yet standard in our organizations, and yet they should be, and we know that, which is why we're looking for ways to bring those things to our organizations. Leaders are so often so concerned about their status or their position in an organization, they actually forget their real job. And the real job of a leader is not about being in charge, it's about taking care of those in our charge. And I don't think people realize this, and I don't think people train for this. There are two things that I think that great leaders need to have: empathy and perspective. And I think these things are very often forgotten. When we're junior, our only responsibility is to be good at our jobs. That's all we really have to do. And you show up and you work hard, and the company will give us tons and tons of training how to do our jobs. They'll show us how to use the software. They'll send us away for a few days to get trained in whatever it is that we're doing for the company. And then they expect us to go be good at our jobs. And if you're good at your job, they'll promote you. And at some point, you'll get promoted to a position where we're now responsible for the people who do the job we used to do, but nobody shows us how to do that. The reason our managers are micromanaging us is because they actually do know how to do the job better than us. That's what got them promoted. We have to go through this transition of being responsible for the job and then turning into somebody who's now responsible for the people who are responsible for the job. Leadership is a skill like any other. It is a practicable, learnable skill. And it is something that you work on. It's like a muscle. If you stop practicing, you will become a weak leader. And as I said before, one of the great things that is lacking in most of our companies is that they are not teaching us how to lead. We all have the capacity to be a leader. Doesn't mean everybody should be a leader, and it doesn't mean everybody wants to be a leader. Like parenting, everyone has the capacity to be a parent. Doesn't mean everybody wants to be a parent, and doesn't mean everybody should be a parent. And the reason is because it comes at great personal sacrifice. That means things like when everything goes right, you have to give away all the credit. And when everything goes wrong, you have to take all the responsibility. That's It's things like when something does actually break, when something goes wrong, instead of yelling and screaming and taking over, you say, try again. It's things like staying late to show somebody what to do. I love talking to CEOs and say, what's your priority? And they put their hands on their hips all proudly and say, my priority is my customer. I'm like, really? You haven't talked to a customer in 15 years. There's no CEO on the planet responsible for the customer. They're just not. They're responsible for the people who are responsible for the people who are responsible for the customer. A few months ago, I stayed at the Four Seasons in Las Vegas. It is a wonderful hotel. The reason it's a wonderful hotel is because of the people who work there. In their lobby, they have a coffee stand. And one afternoon, I went to buy a cup of coffee, and there was a barista by the name of Noah who was serving me. Noah was fantastic. He was friendly and fun, and he was engaging with me. So as is my nature, I asked Noah, do you like your job? And without skipping a beat, Noah says, I love my job. Throughout the day, managers will walk past me and ask me how I'm doing, if there's anything that I need to do my job better. And then he said something magical. He says, here at the Four Seasons, I feel I can be myself. He says, I also work at Caesar's Palace. And at Caesar's Palace, the managers are trying to make sure we're doing everything right. They catch us when we do things wrong. He says, when I go to work there, I like to keep my head under the radar and just get through the day so I can get my paycheck. Same person, entirely a different experience from the customer who will engage with Noah. If we create the right environment, we will get people like Noah at the Four Seasons. If we create the wrong environment, we will get people like Noah at Caesar's Palace. So we in leadership are always criticizing the people. We're always saying, we've got to get the right people on the bus. I've got to fill my team. I've got to get the right people. But the reality is, it's not the people. It's the leadership. We do not practice empathy. What does empathy look like? Empathy is being concerned about the human being, not just their output. Here's the lack of empathy. This is normal in our business world. You walk into someone's office, someone walks into our office and says, your numbers have been down for the third quarter in a row. You have to pick up your numbers, otherwise I can't guarantee what the future will look like. How inspired do you think that person is to come to work the next day? That when somebody has performance problems at work, why is it that our instinct is to say, you're out? Here's what empathy looks like. You walk into someone's office, someone walks into your office and says, your numbers are down for the third quarter in a row. Are you okay? We all have performance issues. Maybe someone's kid is sick. Maybe they're having problems in their marriage. Maybe one of their parents is dying. We don't know what's going on in their lives. And of course it will affect performance at work. And yet we're so quick to hire and fire. You can't hire and fire your children. If your kids are struggling, we don't say, you got to see at school, you're up for adoption. And we have to practice empathy. And one of the groups that we are pretty bad at practicing empathy with is our young millennials. Apparently, this young generation is unleadable. At 100% of the talks that I give or the meetings that I have, invariably, someone will raise their hand and ask about the millennial problem. And so now it's at the point where companies have given up and are now just asking millennials, what do you want? And so they say, we want free food and bean bags. And so now every company has free food and bean bags, and guess what? Nothing has changed. How do we practice empathy with someone we don't understand? How do we practice empathy with an organization or a group that we're struggling with? Too many millennials have grown up subject to what has been described as a failed parenting strategy. There are a lot of kids who got into honors classes, not because they deserved it, but because their parents complained. And they got A's not because they earned them, but because the teachers didn't want to deal with the parents. They got medals for coming in last. They got participation medals. Right? And the science on this is already good. We know that it devalues the feeling that somebody who works hard and comes in first place, and it actually makes the person who comes in last embarrassed because they know they don't deserve it. So it actually makes them feel worse. It actually doesn't help. Then those kids graduate and they start a job. And in an instant, they find out that they're not special, that you don't get anything just because you want it, and your parents cannot help you get a promotion. In an instant, the way they view themselves has completely changed. Turned on its head. And so what you find is that there's an entire generation growing up with lower self-esteem than previous generations. And we think they're full of confidence. They seem to have all the answers. They seem to be telling us what to do. At the end of the day, it's just not there. It's just not true. Remember, they have grown up in an Instagram, Facebook, Snapchat world, in which they are very, very good at putting filters on everything. They're very, very good at curating how they want to be seen. They don't know where they're coming from. They don't know where they're going. They're unsure of themselves, and they lack the courage to ask. We say things like, my door is always open, assuming that they have the courage to walk through the door. This generation is often accused of being entitled, but I would argue that we're misreading the tea leaves. They're not entitled, they're impatient. They grew up in a world of instant gratification. You want to buy something, you go on Amazon, it shows up the next day. You want to watch a movie, you don't check movie times, you just log on and download it whenever you want to watch it. Stream it. If you want to go on a date, you don't even have to be like, hey, you just swipe right, you got a date. They have falsely applied the instant gratification model to life fulfillment and career fulfillment. They want it all instantaneously. The problem is life, relationships, career, it doesn't work that way. It's a journey. That's not how it works. It's not a scavenger hunt. It's as if they're standing at foot of a mountain. They know exactly what they want. They can see the summit. What they don't see is the mountain. So you have an insecure generation that doesn't have coping mechanisms, that wants everything resolved and resolved now. We're now taking this wonderful, smart, idealistic, ambitious, hardworking, good group of people that were dealt a bad hand, and we're putting them in corporate environments that do not care about them as human beings. Our work world has changed over the past 20 and 30 years. We are suffering the side effects of business theories left over from the 80s and 90s. And they are bad for people, and they are bad for business.